Hello, good morning, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Psyched. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, of course, a counseling psychologist by profession. In keeping with the trends of this season, we've been having some controversial conversations about some controversial topics. And this episode will not fail to do that yet again. But before we get into all of that, of course, my favorite segment, Psyched to Know.
Psyched to Know, brought to you by Sule Joseph and Associates. While artificial intelligence is among today's most popular topics, a commonly forgotten fact is that it was actually born in 1950 and went through a hype cycle between 1956 and 1982.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back. You're watching Psyched with your host, Sule A. Joseph. I promised you all a controversial one today. Joining me from overseas, is it a sister or brother Isle, or I'm not sure what is the family relation exactly, but one of our Caribbean brethren, a gentleman who I've come to know on social media. You might just know him too. He's kind of famous a little bit, right? We're going to have this conversation. We're going to have a conversation about AI, artificial intelligence. Is it alive? What does that mean for us? We're going to take a little deep dive, have that conversation, ask some of the hard questions, and probably have a conversation about it. And we may or may not like some of the answers. Joining me this morning is Karen Rose. Karen Moore, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. I'm great. I'm excellent. I'm happy to have you on the program today. So that's excellent. And of course, we're using technology so that you can be present here while in another country. So we see the value of technology. Now, before we just jump into and start having this conversation, what is our running definition for AI? What is AI? For those folks at home looking on who may not know, what is AI?
So, we have a wide variety of artificial intelligence tools that are able to simulate tasks and are able to learn or consume large amounts of data, and they're able to do a lot of the tasks that we as the humans don't necessarily want to do. But artificial intelligence is really just a simulation of intelligence in machines. So they're kind of programmed to think and act like humans. But again, we provide all of the data that it's able to learn and act upon.
Essentially, it's a thinking machine. It's a machine that thinks.
It doesn't think on its own. Like it's trained on the data that we itself feed it. So, this year, 2023, has been all about a lot of artificial intelligence tools that have hit the market at scale, right? And everything is trained off of data that we have provided. So for tools like most popular right now, a ChatGPT is essentially scraping the internet, scraping Google's data, Bing's data, and that's what it's essentially trained off of to understand or learn what is happening in the world.
So we have essentially created software or a program that can learn. And when you say learn, what do you mean by learning? Can it only operate based on input information, or can it process that and make informative or make decisions based on that data that may not, or perhaps maybe even without the data? Take that data and make assumptions beyond just the data, beyond perhaps just like a calculator where you plug in some information and it spits out exactly what you plug in. What are we talking here?
That's essentially what it's like. So there's a new skill set or a new industry called prompt engineering, right? And it's essentially the skills as to learning to be able to interact and operate any of the AI tools. So in order to get anything out of artificial intelligence tools, you need to know what to put into it in order to know what you want to get out of it. So it doesn't think on its own. It's not going to do anything on its own. AI tools all need to be programmed, and it also needs input from the humans in order to execute on the task that it's provided with.
Though this may not be your specific field, I'm going to throw a curveball here and be a little bit of a devil's advocate and say, and perhaps make an argument, but aren't children and human beings trained with data and information, and then they act out based on the data and information that they receive or they are given? Aren't we then functioning aren't we sort of functioning the way AI first started functioning as children? Don't we respond to the data that we are given and we learn and we grow?
I mean, I think the big difference is that humans, they have thoughts, they have emotions, they have feelings. So how they interpret any of the information that they're given is always going to be different based on, their emotions, their feelings, what they would have learned over time. With AI tools, it's black and white. It's black and white. There is no consciousness. There's no feelings. There's no emotions. They're just giving it to you plain as day. So you can't ask an AI tool, how is it feeling today? There is no consciousness in any of these AI tools. They have data that allows them to do tasks that we give it and give us information and help us enhance the work that we do. But again, the difference between humans, there's no consciousness, there's no emotions or anything like that.
I suppose a good jumping point for that point is, how far are we from Terminator? How far are we from having Skynet and having machines take over and having these robots decide that human beings, or the Matrix, that we make a good food source, that the robots decide that they're going to take things over, and that's it for mankind. We've reached the robotic apocalypse. All right. How far are we from that? I think that we want to know, how far are we from reaching extinction at the hands of these dastardly robots?
When everybody thinks about new forms of technology, that's one of the first things that they think about. It doesn't matter what it is, right? People fear what they don't understand.
Right.
When we were operating in the time of horse and buggy, when the person came around with a car for the first time, people did not jump and say, "Hey, great! Now we have cars. We'll get it." No, people were afraid of using cars because, again, there were people that were accustomed using horse and buggy, and we see this happening every single year. Every time there's a new invention, a new piece of technology, People get afraid because they might not understand it or see the benefits. And then over time, once they realize what exactly it is, and that fear goes away, it becomes accepted. So in terms of artificial intelligence, we're nowhere close to Skynet. We're nowhere close to Terminator. Right now, again, all of the tools that we have available to us are trained on existing data. It's not thinking for itself. It needs to be trained on information that we continue to feed it. We're seeing a lot of robotics that are able to replace, that are able to automate a lot of the tasks that are happening in factories. So a good example of that is Amazon's robots. Amazon robots are removing humans from the warehouses. Amazon is well documented for labor laws where people are exhausted, working overtime, not getting enough pay. But guess what? Amazon now has robots, a lot of robots working in the warehouses, doing picking and packing, and that has removed the humans out of the warehouse slowly but surely. And again, that frees up the humans to do something else, because at the end of the day, when we're shopping on Amazon and we want 1-day shipping or 2-day Prime, it's still a human that had to execute that role. But now that we're putting robots into those situations, that they're now able to execute those tasks, those robots can work 24/7 to give us, the humans, more convenience. So we're training a lot of the robots, we're training the AI tools to kind of take away a lot of those remedial tasks away from human, but it still all comes back down to we have to give it the information and we have to program it. We're nowhere near these tools thinking for themselves and taking over.
Well, that's a relief. Let me breathe a sigh of relief. So that no time soon, guys at home, we can expect robots to be taking over Trinidad and Tobago. We don't have to worry about that anytime soon. But you did raise a very critical point on a space where persons have a lot of concern, which is the chances of AI and robots taking traditional jobs or manual labor skill jobs and so on. And eventually, as a matter of fact, a colleague of mine made a joke with me recently saying, wait long enough and there'd be a robot doing counseling, it would take my job. So their persons would be going to robots to do therapy. And I felt like, that's far away. There's so many other jobs that robots may tackle first before they get to being a therapist, right? So I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried about that. But there are jobs that probably will fall by the wayside as we become more techno-savvy.
You see, and again, and that comes back down to the difference between humans and machines. For what you do, a robot can't. It's not going to give empathy. It's not going to feel your feelings. It's not going to do those things. It doesn't have a conscience to say whether what is right or what is wrong. It doesn't have those types of things. So the robots, artificial intelligence tools, so even with AI, right? People are afraid that AI is going to take over our jobs. AI is not going to take over your job. You know who's going to take over your job? People who learn how to use AI and can become 10 times more productive. Those are the people that are going to take over your jobs, because they can become more productive in leveraging all the AI tools than the people who have no interest in learning any of the tools available to them to become more productive. They got to worry about other humans. They're still worrying about humans.
So so your takeaway is, don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
The takeaway to me is everybody has to upskill. Caribbean-wide, we've been facing a problem for a long time. We don't want to upskill. We don't want to keep up with the times, right? So again, think about farming, right? Farming has upgraded over the generations. People used to pick with their hands all the crops, and then came the tractor. And the tractor alone wiped out hundreds of jobs from the farm, right?
Right.
Every new piece of technology, all it continues to do is elevate how we do particular industries, right? People are not going back to the farm to go and pick. No, we have tractors for that. So, but people learned how to go and fix the tractors. They learned how to do other things within the farming industry. So as much as this technology is coming about and it's going to be taking jobs, it's also going to be creating more jobs. The challenge I have for everybody is, are you going to sit there and wait for your job to be made redundant and do nothing about it? Or are you going to keep your head on a swivel and look for new skills that are coming out, new industries, new career paths? Everything I do, the majority of it wasn't around 10, 15 years ago. These are all new skills that I had to learn over the last couple of years to remain relevant. So are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
So you're not putting it on AI and the robots. You're putting it on people and saying that people need to move with the times and upskill.
That is it. We don't have a technology problem. We have a people problem. Our problem Caribbean-wide is we have the majority of people who are afraid because they don't want to upskill to remain relevant in the new market. So we have a lot of companies, right? We have a lot of companies where we complain about the service. We complain, oh, why are they still doing these outdated practices? A lot of businesses and entities in the Caribbean are holding on to old practices to keep people who have not upskilled in the same roles they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. And they don't want to introduce any form of automation or new tools because that would replace the old human capital, right? And we have to suffer, like we, the public, suffer because the companies in the Caribbean are still being held back. So again, it's a people problem.
There's also a cultural, in the Caribbean at least, and let me speak more so for Trinidad then. Let me not speak for Barbados and other islands and so on. Let me speak specifically for Trinidad. Although I know that the culture is similar, there's this feeling that even in business or anything that we do, you want to feel the soul of the business or the soul of the thing that you connect with. We still believe in spirits and feeling, whether there's a saying that we have in Trinidad, if your blood takes somebody or your blood takes something. And when we talk about your blood taking something, it really just speaks to, at first sight, you connect with it, you like it. Right? And we take this as something spiritual. It's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual connection. It's difficult for any of us, therefore, then to see or feel a spiritual connection, for your blood to take a machine. We'd still always feel as though the human touch and the human connection would always perhaps be much better than having to interface with something that we'd probably think would be a soulless machine. And I feel as though that somehow I have no idea if there's any theory, maybe that's something we may need to work on, but there may be a psychology behind a refusal to accept technology based on a cultural practice of being more spiritual and believing in spirituality of interactions.
Now, you raise a good point. Now, I'll leave the psychology to you, right? But you raise a good point. There are a lot of people who, and again, this is an ironic situation to me. You have a lot of people that will say they prefer to interact with humans in Trinidad, right?
Right.
We prefer to go to a place and interact with humans. We don't want to interact with no robots. We don't want to interact with the call centers. We want face-to-face interaction.
Right.
But now, when you ask people, where do you get good customer service in Trinidad, people almost struggle to not be able to name more than 2 or 3 places that they get good service from. And usually when they say they got good service, it's because that one person in the company knows their name and they're okay with that, but they don't get good service all across the board. Right. So I'll give you a good example. If anybody watching goes and uses WebSource as their skybox, right? WebSource has evolved over the years, and they've evolved beautifully. Before, you would go to WebSource when you're picking up your packages, there was long lines all out the door in order to go to a human representative, pay your money, get your receipt, and then go and collect your package. They've now evolved where the majority of the people the stations in the office are self-checkout kiosks. Now there's almost no lines. So the self-checkout machines have replaced jobs that humans were doing, but you know who has a better experience? We have a better experience. Nobody's lining up like they once were. We go in, we check out on the self-checkout machine, we save more time, and that frees us up to go do other things, because I am not going to line up 45 minutes to speak to somebody. When you go into WebSource and you're seeing the kiosks, right, that frees us up to do other things, because now instead of lining up and spending 45 minutes trying to speak to a human, we are in and out of WebSource because of those self-checkout machines, and that frees us up to go do other things.
Well, you raised that point, but there's a supermarket, a major supermarket chain in Trinidad. Well, what some persons call groceries as well, right? We call it supermarket, right? There's a major supermarket chain in Trinidad that started experimenting with self-checkout. And I don't want to call it names, but they started experimenting with self-checkout. There would be lines. I mean, the actual tellers would have lines of people, and the self-checkout machines would be empty. So we have Trinidadians still not utilizing the self-checkout, and would rather go and stand in a long line or a long queue to pay for groceries rather than go and do the self-checkout. And I had asked a couple of people about it, actually, because I was curious. I was curious as to why would you rather line up? And someone said to me, actually both persons who I asked said to me, listen, I didn't just come here to buy my groceries. I don't want to be checking out and paying for checking out my own, cashing my own groceries. There's somebody for that, right? I rather stand up and wait and have my groceries checked out and paid and stuff. They don't want to have to be psychologically. They don't want to be the one cashing their own groceries. So part of what they're saying is, part of the expense and experience of going to the grocery store is standing in a long line and getting your items checked out. I mean, that has been accepted now. Psychologically, we've accepted that as part of the process of going to the grocery store.
So you raise a very good point, right? And we have a lot of reconditioning to do in Trinidad and Tobago, right?
For sure.
Now, I'll draw a difference that WebSource has done versus that particular food chain, right? When you go inside of WebSource, and I'm using their name specifically because they've done it so well that I want people to notice it when they go in there.
Right.
At every opportunity, they are teaching you how to utilize technology. One of the things we do not do at all in Trinidad is we do not teach anybody how to use any of the technology. What we do is we come up with something and we just drop it to the public and expect them to use it, but they've never been trained, they've never gotten comfortable, and again, people fear what they don't understand. So if they do not know how to use it, the fear of messing up and losing their money or getting cursed out because they did something wrong and not having their problems solved, because we already know when we have problems in Trinidad, there's never no resolution to the problems, right? Unless you cause a big stink on social media. But all of those things are roadblocks to people mentally utilizing a lot of the new technology that has been there. Self-checkout's not new, it's only new to Trinidad. I've been checking out my own groceries since 2000. We've had self-checkout in other parts of the world since 2000. So these things are not new. Where the psychology, you could definitely dive into it deeper, is why is it that we would be fearful of it in Trinidad, but then as soon as we hop, skip, and go over to America, we're utilizing self-checkout. We're utilizing all the tools that we would never touch in Trinidad. And that's because in Trinidad, we do not trust people, we don't trust the institutions, and we don't trust that if we do mess up, that there's going to be a quick and easy resolution to our problems, like how it would be in another part of the world.
Okay, so we recognize that clearly there is a trust issue. Clearly there is a psychological component to the advancement of technology and our refusal to jump on that bandwagon as well. For us as a people, right, we recognize there's that. Tell us, for those persons at home who are still perhaps very fearful of the idea of AI, whether they believe that it would soon become alive and take over, or it will take their jobs, or that it will make things more difficult, or it's slowly brainwashing their children into the new world order, or whatever the fears are. I want you to, because we're wrapping up, I want you to leave us with, for those persons at home, leave us with a statement. What would you want us to leave with when we think about AI? When it comes to AI, what is one thing that you would want us to leave with?
So when it comes to AI and any other form of technology that you might be fearful of, I would recommend you taking the time to jump on Google, jump on YouTube, because you're using that for every other thing, usually for entertainment purposes. Jump on YouTube, jump on AI, or jump on Google and start to ask questions about AI. Start to learn how some of these things work. Start to learn about how these things can actually help you in your life. And also start trying to use the tools and technology available to you, start using them on a small scale. So we still have a lot of people who don't even trust basic things like mobile app banking or online banking using their computer. So if we have people who don't trust to use the online bank system, right? Because when you go into the mall and you're seeing people paying their phone bills at a cashier instead of using the online platforms, again, it's a trust thing. Start trying those things out and do it in small doses, because at that point, when you get accustomed to some of the everyday pieces of technology, then you'll realize that when the AI tools come out, these things aren't as scary as we have made it, as we have made it up to be in our heads. I don't know if on the flip side, my message will always be targeting the institutions and the companies. You can't just drop tools and drop technology into the public and expect them to be
just
comfortable.
Use it.
They need to be trained on how to use these things, because in North America and Canada and Europe, we have workshops happening in almost every aspect of our society, teaching us how to utilize tools to enrich our lives. And we don't have that happening in Trinidad. We don't have that happening at all. When the banks launched online banking, they had workshops teaching people how to do online banking. We've never had that. So again, just start to do a little bit of research and just start to implement the smaller pieces. And when you implement the smaller pieces, then the bigger topics like an AI won't be as far-reaching or as far-fetched as it is right now.
Yeah, because I think it is daunting. It's really daunting right now. It just seems like this, especially from the television shows and so on that we've looked at, it's just this daunting idea that perhaps if you use online banking, that is going to tie into end of the world. If you pay your bills online, that somehow is going to tie into the Skynet apocalypse. So that's a general fear that you have with technology. And of course, there's always certain levels of anxiety. There's techno-anxiety that's linked to things like loss of job and income and so on and all those other things. But thank you very, very much, Karen Rose, for joining us today. If persons need to get in contact with you for some, I know you have workshop training programs, you have a lot of things. Somebody perhaps wants to seek your consultancy services. How do they do that? How do they get in contact with you?
Easiest way is you jump on Google and type in my name, and you'll see all of my platforms you can connect with me on. You can go to KarenRose.com, check out my website. A lot of information is there. Information to educate you on a wide assortment of things happening in the digital world. Or you could, message me on social media, Karen Rose, KeronRose, on any social media platform of your choice. And yeah, reach out. Let's have a conversation. All
right. Thanks very much for joining us. This has been Superstar Karen Rose, the Caribbean techno expert. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for alleviating some of the fears that persons may have. And guys, I think one of the things that jumped out the most at me that I would leave with is this: take it in small chunks. Don't be as fearful of the technology. Just try educating yourself. Look, that time that you go on TikTok, YouTube, those videos that you spend hours looking at, try having some of them be on the technological advances, on AI and so on. And we can then view them as tools and not necessarily as opponents or somebody coming to take your job, or the enemy coming to bring the apocalypse. All right, so thanks very much, Karen. Thanks, we had a very good conversation. And one of the things that I learned, actually, or perhaps one of the things that stood out most to me, is that AI is not alive, guys. It's not plotting. It's not plotting our demise. Right? It's not alive. It's not plotting our demise. It only takes the information we put into it. All right?
Correct. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks for being here. All right, guys, so thank you, audience, for being with us today. Next week, Thursday, please God, same time, same place, right here on the WESN family. I'll see you. And until then, stay psyched.
WESN